Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Normal America Show, COVID edition, day 3. Sorry, I'm doing this video late. There's a reason, believe it or not. So I'll talk about my day. So for those of you who don't know, me and my wife found out we had COVID Saturday. So I figured I would just do a little video every day, updating on how we're feeling, particularly how I'm feeling. So let's just get to it, and I'm sure we'll talk about it as the video goes on, but yeah, I feel slightly worse today than I did yesterday. It's had its ups and downs. Some people asked me, I was feeling really good midday. I'm feeling pretty crappy now, and I have a couple symptoms today that I did not have the previous days. So I have noticed my sense of smell and taste is severely diminished today. I can still taste somewhat and still smell somewhat, but it's noticeably less than I am normally. And that's not something other than just being congested. Free thought. Yeah. So like I've had illnesses like that before where you have trouble tasting, but I don't know much about this, but I think your sense of smell has a lot to do with your sense of taste. So when I've had trouble tasting, it's because I was massively congested. So you just feel totally blocked up. I'm slightly congested, but not that much. So it is weird. Like, what was it that I ate first today that I was like, it was like mashed potatoes I had and was like, they're warm. That's nice. But, that happened. The other symptom I've had is it has been slightly, ever so slightly, not worrisome, but more difficult to breathe. Now, I had to go outside in my yard a lot today. I'll explain why here in a minute. So I think with the cold air, I was someone who was diagnosed with asthma when I was young. I haven't treated it since I was like 13 or 14. But there you go. So I've always, when it's cold out and I'm like kind of exerting myself outside, I've always had kind of difficulty breathing. So I don't know if that was why that sensation was more today. And then I had a fever and a headache, a slight nagging cough, the same symptoms that I've had the past couple of days. And I'm more congested, and that's definitely true. If I had, again, I will say this again, I understand everyone's experience could be different with the illness. If COVID wasn't being discussed and, I would not have thought that this was an illness any more significant than what I usually get around this time of year anyways. In fact, if you don't believe me, you could go back last year around this time. It might have been slightly after this. It might have been February, but you can hear I was doing videos like this. Just like 4-hour video that I was like this the whole time because my cough was so bad, my congestion was so bad, my fever was so bad. So I usually get ill about once a year. So it's not catastrophic or anything like that. My wife feels about the same as me. Both of us feel about the same as her sister and mom. Her stepdad has felt slightly worse. But that's it. Now, let me tell you about my day. The reason that I was outside doing stuff is, look, I am someone who believes that this illness has been overblown. It's been used for political purposes. I've talked about that in the channel ad nauseum. However, having said that, even if I had the flu, I'm trying my best not to spread it to other people. So, of course, I'm self-quarantining to the best of my ability. Part of that was like just little stupid stuff like today was garbage day. And I was like, crap. Like, what if I was coughing around on the garbage and the garbage man's throwing out the garbage and gets COVID? So because I didn't have anything like glass or metal, weren't really drinking soda or anything. I just decided to burn all the garbage. So I was outside in the cold burning garbage today, which, why I was out there a little more. But I kind of feel like I need to motivate myself to be doing stuff because otherwise you're just like, I have a slight fever. I'm just sitting around and watch TV all day. So that wasn't bad. However, here's just the kind of life I've been having for the past 3 weeks. For the third time in probably a month, my power went off today at like 8:30 in the morning. So I had a bunch of stuff that I wanted to do, cleaning around the house, things like that. No power. So we wait like 2-3 hours, still no power. It's starting to get cold in the house. So here we are sick with a mild fever and we don't have power. And there wasn't a storm. There wasn't a wreck. It's just, again, no power. So we were in a slightly tight spot. We have blankets and stuff. However, Courtney's family all has COVID, so they were making chicken noodle soup, so we decided to spend the day over there, which is what we did because everyone, her mom, her sister, her stepdad, me, and Courtney, we all have COVID, so we all decided to eat chicken noodle soup and play board games today. So that's what happened. It was just one of those things. And we had no idea if our power came back on or not. We're like, I hope. And so when we came back, we probably got there around noon, and we came back here just recently, which is why I was late doing the video. So at some point the power came on. But I planned on doing a video early before noon today. I had no power, so I wouldn't have been able to use the internet. And then, so it is what it is. So that's why I'm doing this video late, which I do apologize. Again, it's not the end of the world. There are so many people that have things worse than me and my family. I have the greatest family in the world. The illness right now sucks to be sick, but it sucks to be sick no matter what. So, it is what it is. So I'm not sitting here saying, woe is me. Oh, the power went out while I had COVID. Whatever. We'll be all right. In other COVID news with my family, my wife did talk to her doctor today. So some of the things that people have been recommending, her prenatal vitamin does have zinc in it. The doctor has given us the go ahead to take Tylenol. For those of you that don't know, the reason that this matters is my wife's about 9 months pregnant right now. Her due date's January 6th. So we just wanted to talk to her OB just to make sure that there wasn't like anything that normally you would do to treat COVID that you shouldn't do if you're pregnant or something like that. So basically he said everything, or she said, I believe, the nurse said that everything that we've been doing is fine, and that it's no danger whatsoever to baby Hank unless certain criteria met. Like if there was a high fever that lasted more than 4 hours, or if a fever continued and was not being brought down by things like Tylenol and stuff like that, then we should give a call, and maybe they could work with us with some other stuff. But so far we haven't came anywhere near symptoms like that. So good news on that front. And I've heard from, well, I haven't heard, my wife's heard from that doctor and from several other people that work in kind of the nursing field, that just in our little area, they've treated several people that were very pregnant for COVID, and everything's worked out fine for the baby. They haven't seen any complications even once with any baby. So that's obviously, as far as if it was just COVID and we weren't having a baby, it would just be like I would still do this video, and you're still concerned. I mean, again, with any illness, you're still like, things could get worse. But the baby just puts a little extra on. But again, everything's telling us it's not going to be a complication with the baby. So who knows? Things could always take a turn for the worse. But right now, if this is the worst of it, it's not been that bad whatsoever. I'm not belittling you or your family. If you had COVID and it was worse, I'm not doing that. I understand it's different with everyone. I understand particularly in older people. But as far as right now, it feels like a mild illness that I get like once a year. That's how it feels. So, that it is what it is. Gregory Peccary says, at this trajectory, if 35 million people in the U.S. caught COVID, over 560,000 deaths, compare that to 65,000 deaths from the flu. But then that asks all sorts of questions, like when we incentivize hospitals and doctors saying that deaths that occur, there's a financial incentive to say that they are COVID, and we could see that's played out again and again and again. People die in a motorcycle wreck, that's COVID. We saw that with the coroner in Lycoming County, who was one of the first coroners in the country back in May to find that 13 deaths were reported in his county here in Pennsylvania. He did not see one of those COVID deaths, so he blew the whistle on that and demanded to speak to the governor's health department and say, where did you get this information that there were COVID deaths? I'm the coroner. Legally, I would have had to declare that. And they said, our bad. Yes. Sorry, there were 0. We accidentally wrote down 13, but there were 0. Then several other counties in flyover country in center Pennsylvania, their coroner spoke up and said the same thing. So we saw that. What county? That was Lycoming County. We've had that coroner come on to the show. So there's all sorts of questions. For some reason, the flu is all but disappeared this year. Isn't that strange? Very strange. So, yeah, I assume. And we also see that if you were taking those numbers of the death, with the deaths, that's assuming that we're looking at the average of the people that have had COVID versus the deaths. So first you have to assume that all the numbers are actually accurate, which I don't assume. I think that the evidence shows that that's garbage, and we see evidence of that lie all the time. And when you incentivize people to say, this cause of death provides me more of a financial incentive or a political incentive, then they're going to say that. Also keep in mind that many of those deaths, overwhelming amount of them came from people over 75 years old. The number one place that's most likely to have a death from COVID is a nursing home. We saw Democratic governors intentionally put COVID patients into nursing homes, thereby intentionally causing deaths of tens of thousands of people. So those numbers of deaths are going to be inflated. Also, the number of deaths, if you just take the average of deaths for people that had COVID, is assuming, looking at that as if the timeline is the average over the entire timeline, when we could see that initially when we knew less how to treat COVID, there were far more deaths, whereas now the deaths have tapered off considerably, particularly the fatality rate of deaths we have versus the amount. Now, I know people like Joe Biden say that we could see an additional 250,000 deaths by the end of December. Of course, science doesn't show that whatsoever, and supposedly the Democrats are the party of trusting scientists. But they have no problem with Joe Biden just pulling numbers out of his arse, right? 250,000 by the end of by the end of December. You'd like to see documentation for the claims I'm making. Which claim? What does science show? But you tell me. Well, let's talk about the things science shows. One, almost every scientist in the country, and particularly, and also in the world, says that shutting down schools is a mistake. The head of the CDC has admitted that the locking down schools, have actually killed more young people than COVID has. We've had the World Health Organization specifically come out and say that lockdowns are a mistake, that you should only lock down for a week or two if your hospitals are at full capacity. That's not where we're at in this country, yet we see Democrats and Democratic governors suggesting lockdowns. So the science is against that. We don't see any evidence whatsoever that lockdowns have been successful in preventing the disease. We don't see any evidence whatsoever that the additional deaths that we see in this country were caused exclusively by COVID. For example, we see now that places like the World Health Organization are suggesting that somewhere around 200 million people could starve to death in the next few years, partially as a result of the lockdowns of COVID and collapsing economic systems across the country that are responsible for producing food for much of the world. We see deaths from things like Alzheimer's, substance abuse, suicides, etc. have massively increased. We've also seen that these deaths majoritarily are for groups that are over 75 years old. For example, far more people, I believe more people have died over the age of 85 than under the age of 85 in the United States from COVID. And while every death is tragic, if we're looking at the actual amount of human years lost to the illness, it seems evident to me that the lockdowns are causing more of a loss of human years than COVID itself. Because COVID, when it's killing people, they probably have on average, when the life expectancy in this country is 78 to 80. So if the average deaths, or the majority of deaths, are over the age of 80, then we're taking away maybe 1 to 2 years of life per person on average that died of COVID, which is terrible. Don't get me wrong. It's something we should fight for. Whereas every young person that commits suicide, or every young person that dies of substance abuse, or that didn't get a vaccine because they were afraid or unable to go to a hospital because of the fear over COVID, that could be decades lost for every young person that's lost in that way. And that's not even taking the result. We know when economies slip that the quality of life and life expectancy both massively decline. So we're entering into a forced economic depression that could last for decades, with no proof whatsoever that these lockdowns were necessary or worked. We could see that with the evidence, because when we look at places like Florida that didn't lock down as much as places like New York, we could see that they're pretty much commensurate on the amount of infected cases, the amount of deaths, and things like that. In fact, New York was pretty much the second worst place in the entire world, and yet Dr. Fauci has praised it as the model that we should use. Show us where you're reading all of this. Reading what? What source do you want evidence for? You gave a lot of data. You need to see it. Well, one, thank you so much for demanding that I give evidence for stuff. It's nice to see people that lean left finally demand evidence to see something. Surely you want to talk about Russia P-tapes or something like that you never saw evidence for. Second, if you want to enter into a discussion and you don't know the bare facts of what's going on with the case, perhaps you should actually go out and look to research yourself before you're commenting on it. But you go ahead. Let's see some of the things that you want evidence for. So, for example, this is just the first article that I was reading the other day that I could bring up. Oops, sorry. CDC director, school is one of the safest places for kids during COVID. Yep, you wouldn't hear that from the Democrats, right? Trust the scientists. Lockdowns, trust the teachers union, right? What was I reading 2 minutes ago? I wasn't reading anything. I've actually researched this, and I've actually been talking about it for months on my show, so I know this information. So I wasn't reading it. I was telling you the information. There's no reading. My screen is my screen. You're calling me debunked. Show me anything that was wrong about what I said. So we have the CDC director saying that schools are safe. I must have been making up the story about Williamsport, right, in Lycoming County. Probable coronavirus deaths removed from official tool in Lycoming, Tioga counties. Lycoming and Tioga County saw their coronavirus death totals to drop today as the State Department of Health backpedaled in its policy of reporting probable coronavirus deaths. Today, you're actually going to see a decrease in probable cases, specifically probable deaths, and the impacts on our total case count. Yesterday, the State Department of Health reported that Lycoming County had 2 coronavirus deaths, prompting criticism from Lycoming County Coroner Charles E. Kiesling, who, by the way, has been on our show several times, who said no coronavirus deaths had been reported to him as required by law. The state's coroner laws say that any deaths due to an infectious disease constituting a public health hazard is to be reported to my office. I was shocked it was a shock to me to find when I find out that there's 2 deaths and I don't even know about them. Today, the Department of Health amended the probable coronavirus death toll, dropping Lycoming County's case count to 0. Similarly, Tioga County's coronavirus death toll dropped from 2 yesterday to 1 today, according to the Department of Health data. These cases previously were reported as probable, but further review has determined that we needed more information before we could attribute them to a death related to COVID. Now, we actually see that these were in conservative red counties where the coroners actually stood up and said, wait a minute, you're magnifying the amount of deaths. In the case of Lycoming County from 0 to 2, they doubled the amount of deaths in the case of Tioga County, right? And overall, by the end of this, they ended up taking about 40% of something like 20%, I believe, of at the time coronavirus deaths in Pennsylvania, they ended up taking off the books. That's just because we saw conservative places in conservative areas where you had coroners that weren't invested in trying to get financially benefited by saying, oh, we need more aid because there's coronavirus deaths there, nor were these people politically motivated to drum up the case counts of the coronavirus. Do you think that sort of thing happened in Philadelphia? Do you think the coronavirus experts in Philadelphia or the coroners said, oh, wait, they're being exaggerated here as well? I love Twitch. Sorry, I'm reading. Let me go with YouTube as well. What are you saying, Modus? Am I missing you? Owen Benjamin's a joke, okay? Cancel Twitch, yeah. Oh, thanks, Sarah. I really appreciate it. I don't love Twitch. I love people disagreeing with me. It makes for a more exciting conversation than if everyone's just like, yeah, Rob's on it. So I love when people disagree with me. Do we need data for which places? Do we need a citation for Florida having less of a lockdown than New York? Would you like to see data on which state's doing better, Florida or New York? I probably could bring that up. No problem. This is from the CDC, I believe. This is as of December 4th. So it's listed the worst states first. Oh, this is the time used data from reports of coronavirus cases and deaths by U.S. states and counties. The database includes cases and deaths that have been identified by public health officials as probable coronavirus patients, which means they did not have confirmed tests for coronavirus infection, but were evaluated. Not to mention that even the CDC's admitted, I believe, only 6% of deaths were exclusively from coronavirus. Many of the deaths had comorbidities in other cases. So if you have coronavirus and you died, they're going to put that down as a COVID death no matter what. So New Jersey, Democrat-controlled state, big on lockdowns, 195 per 100,000 people. New York, Democrat-controlled state, big on lockdowns, 178 per 100,000 people. Massachusetts, Democrat-controlled, I believe, 160. Let's go to Florida. Remember, Florida's horrible. They didn't do the lockdowns. Oh, Florida, 89. Huh. Isn't that odd? It's way down there. But wait a minute, weren't we told that if we didn't embrace the lockdowns that it would be hell on earth, it would be an apocalypse? How is it then that that's the case? That the states that had the biggest lockdowns have the biggest per capita amount of deaths? Isn't that odd? Okay, so I provided sites. Anything else you need a site for that you think I was inaccurate saying? I know, Sarah. I know the game. You're absolutely right. I just think it's funny. Florida came in third yesterday for total COVID deaths. What? Per capita? Or just in one day? Or like over a week period or something? Huh. Isn't that odd? Are you disputing the data that I've presented here? Post the source. Oh, yeah, for him. I'll post the source in here too so you guys can see it. Now, everybody who studied this knows this is the case. Your link was garbage, at least for me. I'll try it one more time. This is why you don't trust people like this. Here, I'll click on his link. You can see what it brings up. Ready? Thanks. Bye-bye. And again, if the lockdowns were so necessary, why is it that, I don't know, almost no health experts spoke up when we had hundreds of thousands of people protesting for Black Lives Matter or celebrating an alleged Joe Biden victory? That stuff was okay. Remember, thousands of health experts signed off saying, oh, actually, coronavirus is bad, but white supremacy is worse. Remember? Trust the science, they say, as they continue to bow to the teachers' unions that hate our children, that continue to shut down schools, even when all the scientists says the schools are one of the safest places for them. Trust the science, they say. Right, Liazel. If states adjusted their threshold below 25 in the PCR test, many results would be extremely low. Yes, I've heard of Worldometers, and do you deny the source that I presented? The clever trick that you want to play is you're not looking at deaths per capita. Instead, you're looking at total amount of deaths. Because Florida's population is higher, of course, they're going to have more deaths. But if you're correct that lockdowns are so necessary, then we would expect to see a catastrophic amount of deaths per capita when it came to... What is going on here? 1 second. Here's the site you want, Worldometers. This is from today. So if we look at total amount of deaths, you can see that New York, number 1, Texas, number 2, California, number 3, Florida, number 4. If we look at deaths per capita, you see New Jersey, number 1, Democrat, New York, number 2, Democrat, Massachusetts, number 3, Democrat, Connecticut, number 4. Louisiana, I might be a Republican. I can't recall. North Dakota, Mississippi, South Dakota. Where's Florida? Where's Florida? Oh, look at this. Way down here at number 17. But they're horrible, right? That's your source, right? Worldometers? Right? Isn't that your source? All 17. That's today. Click yesterday. This is the total amount of deaths per 1 million people. Is your argument, is your claim literally that Florida has had so many deaths today? So Florida's deaths, for example, at number 17 per million are 898 is where we're at here. You're claiming that Florida had so many deaths today that propelled them up to number 3 in total deaths per million population. That's your argument? Yeah, okay. But that's why I like talking to people like this. You can see kind of the absurdity, the constant moving of the goalposts, using their own source to debunk them. I'm looking at data that's not updated. Put me the link from the data today from Worldometers then. Put me the link. Show me the link or you're a liar. Click yesterday. Post the link. I clicked on it. This is what Worldometers brings up. I don't know how to click yesterday. Post the link. Up on the left. Okay, here's up on the left. Oh, yesterday. Okay, here's yesterday. And here you are again, a liar. So from yesterday, we see total deaths per 1 million population. Number 1, New Jersey. Number 2, New York. Number 3, Massachusetts. Number 4, Connecticut. Number 5, Louisiana. Number 6, Rhode Island. Number 7, North Dakota. Number 8, Mississippi. Number 9, South Dakota. Number 10, Illinois. Number 11, Michigan. Number 12, the District of Columbia. Let's scroll down for you. Number 13, Arizona. Number 14, Indiana. Number 15, Georgia. Number 16, Arkansas. Number 17, Florida. You are a liar. Right, I just clicked what you wanted. Right. That's the source. You lie again. You're such a liar. You wanted us to believe that if we looked at the data that showed that was up to date from yesterday, or from tomorrow, the 8th, if we looked at that data, that would take Florida from 17th per capita dead to 3rd. Click it again, okay? Let's click it again. Here's the link you want me to click. There it is. I just clicked your link. Here's me clicking yesterday, as you suggested. Here's me clicking per capita, deaths per 1 million population. And here's Florida at number 17. Again, the link you posted, the exact same as the link I posted. Every single one says the same thing. Can you post me one link saying that Florida per capita is number 3 in total deaths? Yes, I clicked that link. That's exactly what I just clicked. I just clicked the last one. And yes, I clicked the deaths per million population. That's per capita. Yes, that's what I clicked. That is what I said. So, I enjoy this. These are some of my favorite shows. I love when people come on and they know more than everyone else. They're going to present the data. They're going to present it. No, you're looking at the data wrong. Try this link. Okay, that link shows that you're absolutely lying or wrong. Per capita is racist. I'm sure. Yeah, I hear you, Sarah. By the way, if you guys are interested, check out my friend Sarah, who's in their chat. Sarah Corrier's channel. She's one of my favorite content providers. So you can find her at Sarah Corrier on YouTube. Where you at, Gregory? Where you at, man? No? Right. So you were wrong. You gonna be big enough to admit that you were absolutely wrong? You admit that? Do you have any explanation for why we were told that the lockdowns were so important, yet Florida, which had the least amount of lockdown, one of the least amount of lockdowns? Wrong about what specifically? Your claim that per capita Florida was 3rd in death. Why? What? You just proved me wrong. What was I wrong about exactly? I kept saying if you click my specific link, it would show that Florida had the 3rd per capita deaths. What was I wrong about again? So as you can see, even having COVID, I still have a good sense of humor. I'm still laughing a lot. So bye-bye, Gregory. You can I'm not going to kick you out of the channel, but I'm done engaging with you. Right, it's 17th out of 50th. Correct. Yep. You said it was 3rd. You lied. Or you were grossly misinformed. Is that good? Well, here's the question, right? So, all right, I will answer this. That's the question. Remember, that's because its population's higher, Gregory. We should be looking at per capita deaths. The states that lock down the hardest, New Jersey, New York, they have the most deaths. So where's the proof that the lockdowns are successful? If the argument that was being presented by the people advocating for the lockdowns was true, then it's not just that we would expect Florida to be 17th. We would expect Florida to be number 1 in deaths per capita by a long shot because they refused to lock down. So the deaths would be catastrophic there. That's the argument. Why are we accepting the known evil of giving away our rights and destroying our economy if we're just talking about, well, if you do all that, you'll be 1 or 2 with per capita deaths in your state. And if you don't, you'll be 17th. But still, we should lock down and destroy the economy. North Dakota, right, one of the states that didn't lock down. I didn't name call, did I? Maybe I did. I apologize if I did. You lied. So, anyways, that's something you see. Ad hominem is the last resort. Blatantly lying and saying, no, click my link over and over again when your link is inaccurate is probably the last resort. So, I mean, you came in saying Florida was 3rd per capita. I went to one website, showed that it was 17th. You said, no, that's not true. Check Worldometer. So I check it. It says that they're 17th as well. You said, no, click yesterday. I click it. It says that they're 17th as well. You say, no, click this specific link. I click that specific link. It says they're 17th as well. And then all of a sudden you say, yeah, they're 17th. And act like that you weren't completely wrong. It's a joke. It's a joke. Either you blatantly lied, which probably isn't true, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, or you're literally ignorant of what those numbers actually mean, which probably means that before you comment so surely on things that you should maybe make sure that you're at least in the ballpark of understanding things like per capita deaths and things like that. And that's if we accept the numbers. That's all. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. But when I've had it, I've said things and then been proven to be wrong. I'm like, oh yeah, that was wrong. It starts to make you an unreliable person or a person that's not worthy of having a serious discussion if you're blatantly proven to be wrong, even by your own source, and you continue to say, what? Where was I wrong? I was right. Oh, yeah, absolutely, Julie. And I've talked about this. People are going to be really scared, she says. When unemployed people are hungry, homeless, desperate people will break in looking for food. It's going to happen. Yeah. I mean, the pains that we'll see as a result of the lockdowns, which are unproven to be an effective case. Even the World Health Organization says. Do I believe that 4/5 of the planet's population having 1/3 of the infections a good job? Again, this is a common tactic that you see, so we'll totally change the direction that this goes. Want to see what the lockdowns are leading to? UN warns of impending famine with millions in danger of starvation. November 27, 2020. The numbers are staggering as reflected in the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, which has triggered a new round of food shortages, famine, and starvation. According to the Rome-based World Food Program, 690 million people do not have enough to eat, while 130 million additional people risk being pushed to the brink of starvation by the end of the year. Hunger is an outrage in the world of the plenty. The empty stomach is a gaping hole in the heart of society. Well, that's good. I'm glad that more people are going. Hundreds. Do you think that's a success? Do you think those lockdowns are a success? Helping lead to more millions starving? You think that's all right? You think that's good? Do you have any evidence that the lockdowns were necessary? Do you know how much we're going to have an increased food shortage because we told young, healthy people that we're at almost no risk of dying of coronavirus, that they couldn't go to these jobs? Gregory says, I never said lockdowns are a success. Well, then you're not engaged in what the conversation was. The entire point of this conversation was that we've locked down and we've destroyed the economy and we've caused people to be sick in many other ways, and it's a disaster, and it hasn't proven to be effective against COVID. That was the entire point of the conversation. So if you're saying I never said I agree with lockdowns, then you're just deflecting once more, which is another common tactic that we see on the left. You can't argue the merits of what I'm saying, so that you have to then change the subject. So you changed the subject to talk about Florida. The entire point of talking about Florida was how if the lockdowns were successful and necessary, then we would expect to see a place like Florida per capita would be towards the top of the deaths because they resulted in almost none of a lockdown recently. And yet they're number 17th. That's what we argued about for 20 minutes. You were wrong. Over and over again, you were wrong. I proved that you were wrong. Then you changed the subject. Now you're changing to saying, well, I was never saying that lockdowns were successful. Yeah, I'm done with you, Gregory. For real this time. So, but okay, into the broader question. Yeah, me and Courtney are feeling well. Again, we will continue to quarantine as we were doing from the get-go. As soon as we found out that people in her family were sick, and look, let me explain something, right? My feeling on how to fight this, just to go back, and I know people that are regular to my show will know this. I talked about this even back as early as March, that there were 3 things that could be a danger from COVID to this country. The first was the illness itself. I said it could kill anywhere from 1,000 to 1 million people. I had no idea. It could kill more than that, I even said. I don't know. And that's, every death's tragic. I don't know if it'll be a nothing burger or if it'll be a massive deal, but as a country, we will survive eventually. I said that the second thing is, will the remedy be worse than the disease? So the lockdown and the resulting economic collapse and the other illnesses that people will suffer and die from as a result of the lockdowns, I predicted that that will be worse than COVID. I still think that that will bear out. However, we would still survive as a country. It might take 10 years to get back on track, but we would survive. However, what we can't survive as a country is anytime the government says, oh, there's a threat out there, we need to take all of your rights away. And then, by the way, not only that, but then arbitrarily decide which groups have to follow those orders and have their rights taken away and which groups don't. So if you're for Black Lives Matter, you don't have to follow those orders. If you're a governor or a mayor that's a Democrat, you don't have to follow those. Oh, we can't go to Thanksgiving, but you could go out to a fine place and dine. Hollywood can have, a movie studio can have a bunch of people set up for outdoor dining right across from a business, a small business that had to be canceled because of their outdoor dining, and things like that. That's what our country can't survive. That's the biggest threat to our country. Because if you give authoritarians the powers to take your rights away, then you don't have rights. And if you don't have rights, you don't have a country. You have a dictatorship. Ironically, the very thing that the left has been accusing Trump of. Trump has been the opposite of a dictator. Trump refused to have the federal government go in and lock places down. He let the states make up their own mind. A real dictator would have used his pulpit, the federal government, to force lockdowns and to force his ideas to be enforced upon the states. Instead, he let the mayors and the governors do it themselves. And we could see which mayors and governors were the most authoritarian, the Democrats. While they locked down healthy age populations, because the idea of, if we don't lock down a healthy person that's going to a 9-to-5 job that's helping keeping the engine of this country running, well, theoretically, they could come in contact with someone who has comorbidities and that's in a population group, such as old people, that will suffer more severe effects from coronavirus. So they locked down the healthy population and then intentionally put COVID patients into nursing homes, thereby killing tens of thousands of people. That's what they did. So you had to be locked down, the healthy person, because theoretically you could have, hypothetically, in a crazy chain of events, spread COVID to the nursing home. So they locked down people in that, for that reasoning, and then intentionally gave coronavirus to people in nursing homes. That's right, HM Sticks. 40% of the deaths are in supervised care nationwide. And that's not even the full story, because in places like New York, where Cuomo actually issued this disastrous policy, they stopped counting nursing home deaths. At one point in New York, if you were in a nursing home, suffered COVID, started to have severe effects of it, like you were dying, and they put you in an ambulance, and the ambulance gets you out of the nursing home and is at the stop sign turning out of the parking lot of the nursing home, and you die in that ambulance, guess what? That's not a nursing home death. That's how New York's counting them. Oh, you didn't die in the nursing home. Now, granted, you died because you were in a nursing home that Governor Cuomo forced COVID patients to go into. You weren't allowed to see your family. And again, I've told this story over and over again. Imagine being a 90-year-old woman. Maybe you've just had your first great-grandchildren. You can't wait to see them. Then you're in a care facility because you're having health problems. You're told there's this illness out there called COVID. So unfortunately, you won't be able to have your family visit you. They can call on the phone once in a while, but you won't be able to see your great-granddaughter. Sorry. Because this virus is so deadly. And you go, oh, that's terrible. Hopefully this will be over soon and I can see my family. And then they say, here's your new roommate. Oh, they have that same virus. The same virus that we're saying you can't see your son and daughter and your grandchildren over. This person, your new roommate, has it. There you go. And then you get the virus. All the while you were unable to see your children. And as you lie there dying, the last thought that runs through your head is your family won't even be able to have a funeral for you. You spent the last 3 months of your life in agony because you were intentionally infected with COVID by Democratic governors, and your family won't even be able to mourn you in a funeral. That happened. That's not some slippery slope hypothetical. That actually happened in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Michigan, New York. That happened. And then those governors pointed to all those deaths and said, see how bad COVID is? This proves we need more lockdowns. See how many people are dying? But you killed them. Nonetheless, they're dead. So we need to listen to me more and have more lockdowns. I can't do an Australia. I do. Crocodile Dundee is one of my favorite movies, but I'm not very good at the... Oh, yeah. And Lisa, you can see they're giving up the game. You can see. I've seen blue checkmark leftists on Twitter saying, well, maybe this is a good thing. We had too much of an aging population. Remember, they have contempt for the elderly population anyways. You see it all throughout the Western world. Remember Brexit? For those of you that think that, the deep state's a myth, globalism's a myth. Remember, every time there's a vote against the interest of the globalists, all of a sudden they say, well, that democracy doesn't count. Donald Trump won. We don't like that. We're going to say the election wasn't fair for 4 years. Brexit won. We don't like that. We're going to say that we need to revote. The Libson Treaty in Ireland, we don't like that. We need to revote. Every single time there's a vote against the interests of the globalists. All of a sudden, democracy doesn't matter then. Remember what they said after Brexit? I saw it on the BBC. I saw it on Question Time. They said, it's these older people. They're not going to have to suffer. They're not going to have to be around here. It's these damn older people. They're not going to suffer the consequences of leaving the EU. It's us. It's younger people. You can see the contempt they have for the older people. You see these blue checkmark people. Well, old people kind of are a burden. If they pass, that's sad. But, there could be a silver lining here. We get rid of people that are a drain on the society. And they tend to vote conservative. So... my Russian's pretty good. I'm terrible with accents because I'll do it good one day and then for some reason I lose it the next. So let me check something real quick. But yeah, Gregory, even if the numbers you're saying would be totally accurate, you have lost all semblance of people trusting anything you post when you blatantly lie and said that when even the link was showed to you showing that Florida was not third in per capita deaths, you continued to claim that it was. So any numbers that you put up or any claims you make like that, I don't care what you say. Liar. Or someone who's so inept that you don't even know what these numbers mean. But it's true, I swear. Yeah, Hegelian dialect, absolutely. Create the problem. And this is the problem with the stimulus. Oh, we collapsed the economy. But now you have to leave us spend $2 trillion. Look, the people are suffering. They need money. What did I say? Look, follow your own content creators. There are a lot of great ones out there. I was right about initially that Trump made a mistake embracing the lockdowns in places from like Cuomo and Gavin Newsom and criticizing states like Florida and Georgia and criticizing Sweden. I said Trump was making a mistake then. A bunch of Trump supporters said I was wrong. I said that it was a mistake for the Republicans to push forth that $1.7 trillion stimulus bill because the majority of that money would not go into the hands of the average people that needed it. That's still true. We saw that it went to places like Planned Parenthood. It went to modern art museums. It went to liberal arts colleges. It went to the Shake Shack. It went to the LA Lakers. That's where the majority of the money went. Airlines. I said it was a mistake. Everyone said, no, the Republicans are on this. I said it's a huge mistake. Now, that's exactly what's going to keep happening. They've bailed out places like Walmart, places like Amazon. Other big businesses have gotten incredibly rich as a result of the lockdowns, which have devastated the middle and working class of this country. Nancy Pelosi said just the other day that she was unwilling to send actual payments to the average American people when Donald Trump was in office. But now that it looks like Biden was going to win, now all of a sudden she'll care and help send out those checks. Isn't that strange? Nancy Pelosi admitting, yeah, I know the American people were suffering. Good. I wanted them to suffer. That's what they get for voting for Donald Trump in 2016. Oh, but if it appears that they didn't all of a sudden, well, now it's okay to stop punishing the American people. And the Democrats are okay with that. The same Democrats that tell you they're morally superior because they care about the working class and they care about, I'm not talking about your friend down the street that happens to vote Democrat. I have plenty of friends that vote Democrat that aren't immoral, crappy people, but the people running the party, that's who I'm talking about. They tell you they're more moral. They're the party of the working class people. That's what they claim. Yet their policies are making Jeff Bezos rich and ruining middle America. That's what they did. Nancy Pelosi just admitted it. They literally infected nursing homes with COVID so they could say, geez, look how bad things are. Better not vote for Donald Trump. If they're willing to kill tens of thousands of elderly people just in an attempt to get Donald Trump out of office, what other crimes do you think they're unwilling to commit? You think if we give them power? Oh, because what do they want? The globalism, socialism that they're, faux socialism that they're offering, more power for them. They'll trust you. They'll trust them. They'll take care of you. I mean, yeah, they had to intentionally kill nursing home patients to get elected, but they'll take care of you now. Yeah, they intentionally let you go broke and let you not be able to pay your mortgage and pay your bills until Donald Trump was out of office, but trust them, they'll take care of you now. Yeah, they supported people burning down cities, but they'll take care of you now. Now it's a call for unity. Joe Biden spread the lie. He said the single reason that he got into the race was because Trump called Nazis good people. That's a lie. He also said several times that there were many Trump supporters that were racist and other horrible things. Now he's calling for unity. Now that it appears he won, allegedly, we'll see what happens. Now, let me just say a couple more words and I'll be out of here. I wore a mask almost everywhere. And I know a lot of Trump supporters don't like that. I did that because I worked in home health care and I was frequently around people that were in hospice care. So it was my choice to wear masks. Also, let me just be quite clear. My feeling is this on masks. To each their own. But if you don't wear a mask and you go into Walmart and some girl that's making $10 an hour says, sir, sorry, you can't be in here without your mask. Don't give them a hard time. Just leave. Why? You're not the people that make the decision. You're never going to talk to. You're talking to some low person on the totem pole whose boss's boss said, hey, you go out there and tell that guy he has to have a mask on. So my feeling was, if I'm going to go into a store and I know they want me to wear a mask, I'll wear the mask. If I don't want to wear the mask, I won't go into the store. That simple. So I did wear a mask almost everywhere. I still got COVID. I didn't go to any big events. And not just because I was, not at all because I was afraid of COVID. That's not at all why. Because I'm a boring person who's broke and who's, married and has a kid in the way. So I didn't go out to a lot of events. In this past 7-8 months, I've rarely seen people. Work people, family people. That's about it. Didn't go to the movies, didn't go to a sporting event, didn't go to a concert. A couple of restaurants. Don't eat out that much anyways. So I think that I was in a population, not because I'm beating my chest saying, I'm doing things the right way. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just happen, coincidentally, to be in the population that basically did things the way that the Democrats say should be done. I got COVID. Now, that doesn't prove anything, right? But the reason I bring it up is this. What you will not hear from me is saying, curse people that didn't wear a mask, curse people that went out to this event or that event. Now I'm sick. You're not going to hear that from me. Even if I would take a turn and things would get really bad for me health-wise, you're not going to hear that from me. I made the choices to go to the areas that I went to, period. If I was massively afraid about COVID, I would have stayed indoors. I didn't. Even though I barely went out, I still went out. It's life. And one of the things that's been shocking to me is, you bump into someone at the gas station. Hey, how's it been? Not bad. 3 days later, I put on Facebook, I got COVID. Everything's doing fine, but I just want to let people know. And, I got people like that I bumped into going, my God, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't give it to you. Like, genuinely feeling bad. I'm like, it's just shocking me. I'm like, don't be ashamed for human interaction. It's okay. Don't lose sleep over it. Even if something would happen, it's not your fault. Masks don't really work. Maybe, maybe not. You know, look, I said in March when the CDC came out and said don't wear masks, I said that was something so stupid that only health experts could say. That's right, me went against the CDC in March on masks. Not because I knew that masks worked, but because I knew that the health organizations admitting we know next to nothing about this disease had no clue whatsoever that masks didn't work. They didn't know it then. They didn't know hardly anything about the disease. So how were they confident in telling people don't wear a mask? I said, that's ridiculous. Wear a mask if you feel like it. Don't listen to the CDC. That's what I said. And yet I'm accused of being an anti-mask. Even though I wear my mask almost everywhere, I have questions about whether or not it works. I basically wear it because I don't want to hassle people making minimum wage that then have to tell me, sir, you have to wear a mask. And I was around people that were doing hospice care and people that had severe comorbidities. So on the off chance that it worked, I wore it. I didn't wear it all the time. I wasn't out much. So it wasn't like I'm sitting there 8 hours a day with the mask on. Now, my wife had to at work, and it affected her through her pregnancy. She was told by her doctor she was getting severe nosebleeds. And they were told it's because she's pregnant and she's wearing a mask 8-9 hours a day. So she had to make time at work to take that mask off. Minutes every hour. But in general, I wore the mask. Again, there's science that says masks work and masks don't. It's irrelevant in my case because I wore the mask. I'll know this. I'll tell you one of the dangers of masks and the rhetoric of masks. I can tell you that right now. Let me ask you this, Lord Alpaca. You seem to be someone who's, I'm not trying to be contentious here, but you seem to be someone who is at least knowledgeable of why you think masks work. So let me ask you this. If you wouldn't mind engaging with me for a minute. Do you think that there were any scientists out there that said, if we just wear masks, that's all we need to do? Don't have to worry about social distancing. Don't have to worry about finding vaccines or anything. Just if everyone wears a mask, that'll solve the problem. Did you hear any credible medical scientists saying that, Lord Alpaca? And I'll wait and see. That's funny. Right, and that's right. That's honestly the truth. Lord Alpaca says, I don't think that's the case. Right, because if that was the case, no one would have advocated lockdowns. They'd say, no need to lock down anything. Everybody wears a mask. Go ahead, go do whatever you want. Go to the sporting event. Go to the concert. Right. In fact, it is my understanding that almost everyone said the preferable thing to do is social distance. However, if for whatever reason that's not possible, wear a mask. But no one credible is saying that the mask is the end-all be-all. So I think you agree with that statement, Lord Alpaca. So one of the potential dangers of the mask is this, that one of the arguments we constantly hear from the Democrats when we say, but wait a minute, why are you telling people they can't go to church, yet you were all for 100,000 people protesting for Black Lives Matter? They say, well, they had masks on. But we just admitted that's not the end-all be-all. So there are hundreds of thousands of people that are misinformed, or they're just hypocrites, it's probably the latter, that think, though, let's assume they're misinformed, that think, well, hey, I could go out and violate social distancing orders as long as I wear the mask. If I wear the mask, then I'm okay. That's not true. So instead of putting the focus on where it should have been, if we are to believe the experts said, number one thing, social distancing. That's what they said. But instead of focusing on that, they chose to lecture, well, Trump supporters aren't wearing masks. That's the problem. And then thousands of them signed a document saying, actually, COVID's bad and millions could die of it, but white supremacy's worse, so get out there and protest. Then we started to see Democratic governors, like my governor, Tom Wolf, violating his own social distance orders. Why? To go march with Black Lives Matter and take photos with some people that weren't even wearing masks. So he called us cowards. That's what he did. He said us people in Pennsylvania that were upset because we are losing our jobs and couldn't provide food for our families. He said we were cowards and that he would take away our license to operate a business if we violated his orders. And then he promptly violated his own order to march with Black Lives Matter. And the reasoning that we had to put up with this authoritarian hypocrisy was, but masks, they had masks. Show me the science that says that's okay. Then we had a bunch of scientists saying, actually, there's no proof that the Black Lives Matter protests spread COVID. Sturgis did. The Trump rally did, but not the hundreds of thousands of people for Black Lives Matter. So we're supposed to believe that this is the first virus in history that only affects people based on their political beliefs. That's what we're told. Even Dr. Fauci refused to call out the protest. When Rand Paul asked him specifically, he was like, well, I would just say people shouldn't gather. But what about these protests? I'm not going to talk about that. I would just say people shouldn't gather. So why should we trust health experts that are saying that? Again, I'm the only person I've heard in the country say this, and I've said it over and over and over and over and over again. I do not believe the experts. That's not the part. I don't believe them. They're hypocrites. They don't follow their own orders. If they were really concerned that COVID was that deadly, and that if you didn't wear a mask and social distance, that you would stand a significant chance of dying, then they wouldn't be violating their own orders. For example, if I knew there was a significant chance that if I did a particular thing, that I would get AIDS or HIV or cancer, I would not do that thing because those are illnesses that are mighty severe. Yet, we see the experts all the time. How many of the health experts in California ate at the French Laundry with Gavin Newsom? At least 2 that we know of. Almost like they're not that concerned. If they were afraid they were going to die of this crippling illness, I'm sure they wouldn't have went out. Yet they did. So this is the thing that I'm one of the only people I've heard talk about. Let's assume for a minute that Dr. Fauci and Health Secretary Levine here in Pennsylvania and Whitmer and Tom Wolf and Gavin Newsom and Cuomo and Dr. Birx and the CDC and the World Health Organization, let's assume they're all right, okay? Let's assume they all have the people's best interests. I know this is a leap for those of us that know better, but let's play devil's advocate and let's look at it like they actually want the best interests of the people at heart. Right? And they're right that masks and lockdowns and social distancing, if we do that, we'll get through this. That's the key to solving this. So let's assume that's right. There are not enough police in this country or in the world to enforce social distancing and mask ordinances amongst the people. There just aren't. You can't have one police for every one person saying, hey, put your mask on. Hey, you, don't leave the house. You can't do it. So what you need is to get people to buy in. Now, here's the great thing about America. Americans are willing to make sacrifices for their neighbors, for the greater good. We are. But in order to get people to buy in, you need the experts and the leaders of the country to make the same sacrifices that they're asking the people to make. If not, if they engage in hypocrisy, then the people are going to say, yeah, I don't believe this. And they know that. Dr. Fauci knows that. Dr. Birx knows that. The CDC knows that. They know. The governors know that. They know if they tell a bunch of people, you have to stay in your house for Thanksgiving, and yet they all go out for Thanksgiving, the people are going to say, we don't believe this shit. They know that. They know that if they say, you can't go to church, but you can go out for the Black Lives Matter rally, the people are going to say, we don't believe this crap. They know that. Yet they did it anyways. So, once more, we're back to, are the experts just the dumbest people? That again, the average person, everybody in this chat, regardless if you're on the left or the right, if you support Trump or Biden, if you're third party, if you're apolitical, regardless what your job is, construction worker, fast food worker, lawyer, doctor, regardless of your education level, I bet you every person in this chat would acknowledge, like, yeah, if you're asking people to make sacrifices, you need people to voluntarily engage in that. We don't have enough police to force it on everyone. It won't work. Everybody knows that. And everybody knows the most effective way to do that is to have your leaders at least pretend to engage in the behavior they're asking of other people. Yet they didn't do it. You don't think Dr. Fauci was smart enough to realize that? You don't think Dr. Birx was? Or the CDC? You don't think Gavin Newsom was? Or Governor Wolf? Health Secretary Levine? You don't think they knew? Oh, if we engage in blatant hypocrisy, if we tell one group of people, it's cool for 100,000 of you to go out and protest tomorrow, but the rest of you can't go to work. You can't go to church. It's okay for us to go to Thanksgiving dinner with our families, but you can't. You don't think they didn't know if they did that, it would cause people to distrust them? So there's only 2 explanations. One, once more, the experts are dumber than the average person. And therefore, we can't blame anyone except the experts for the spread of this, and China, of course. That's who started it. Or second, they're full of it. And that's the truth. It was never about keeping the people safe. It was about control. That's what it was about. It was about giving more control to the people in power, to the establishment, and eliminating the middle class and making everyone dependent on the government. That's what it was about. Just like I've done this experiment many times. I'll ask everyone, what's your profession? I'll have a bunch of people in chat say, I'm a carpenter, I'm a truck driver, I'm a lawyer. I'll say, okay, we don't have any epidemiologists in here? Okay. Let me ask you this question. And go ahead, we can play here now. If you feel like it, type what your profession is. Doesn't matter, even if you're unemployed. Just so we can see there aren't a bunch of epidemiologists in here. I'm certainly not. My job was, I sell life insurance now. I was doing home health care for a long time, and I have zero expertise in epidemiology. None. Waiter, patent examiner, right? I don't see any epidemiologists. Okay, there we got someone 35 years in medicine and data analytics. Porn star says Craigslist. Fantastic. Right? So you can see, so far we don't see any epidemiologists. We see varying degree, even a porn star here. We see a varying degree of people. Major League Baseball player, flight logistics, industrial mechanic. Fine. Let me ask you this. So we have a bunch of people from varying backgrounds. Let me ask each and every one of you this. Let's say I say this. Hypothetically, in 2022, there's going to be this virus that's coming. I've heard this, that there's going to be this virus that's coming, and it's going to be sort of a respiratory illness. What group of, if you had to predict a group of people that it will affect the most, who would you predict? So there's a virus. Who's it going to be most deadly for? Absolutely FTW nil. That is why Obama said the internet's the biggest threat to democracy. Elderly, maybe the very young. Only people well endowed will put it. Elderly. Poor people. Poor people's not a bad guess either. The young, poor people, the elderly. That's the groups you would guess. People with other illnesses. Right? Is there anyone that would disagree with that? The old and the sick, old people, ill people. Yep. Now, we have people saying that. Are these people, was this a group of epidemiologists? No, average people, average jobs. So then explain to me how they knew more than Health Secretary Levine in Pennsylvania, who is an epidemiologist. Health Secretary Levine said, a virus is coming. So we want to make sure that it kills as few people as possible. I know what we'll do. We'll take people with the virus and we'll lock them in with old people. Now, we all knew that was stupid. All the people that said, yeah, old people would most likely be affected. Every one of us would go, oh, well then yeah, you want to keep the old people isolated from the sick. But not our health secretary. She said, no, the key is to put the sick people in with the old people. That's the key. That's what Health Secretary Levine said. That's what Governor Cuomo said and his health experts. That's what Governor Whitmer and her health experts said. That's what Governor Murphy and his health experts said. How is it that the average person knew that that's asinine? That that's the last thing you would do? That's like saying this. Pit bulls are a problem. And the people that pit bulls are most lethal for and will most affect are infants and young people. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that, normal age adults don't have contact with pit bulls. And the way we're going to do it is by putting pit bulls in daycare centers. We'll lock all the pit bulls in with the infants and the toddlers. That's what we'll do. That'll make sure that people don't die of pit bulls. You would say, wait, what? Didn't you just say the pit bulls are most likely to attack the young people? Yeah, we'll put them all in with the young people. And then when they start biting the young people, it's like, oh, geez. Well, damn. Look at how many people are dying. That proves you have to believe me. I was right. Look how dangerous pit bulls are. It's nonsense. Every one of us know it. Over and over, we see these health experts. Again, how many health experts are like, dude, show me a health expert that says that we should have schools locked down. Yeah, that's what our leaders are doing. Where's the evidence for this? The Democratic Party is one of the biggest problems we have in the country, but they're just the absolute born and bred face of the establishment. Don't be mistaken. Mitt Romney, John McCain, though he's dead, Jeff Flake, Paul Ryan, Lindsey Graham, they're just as crappy. Lord Alpaca says, if you were the adversary of the U.S. like Russia and you ran trolling campaigns to ruin the U.S., what kind of campaigns would you run? Simple. Turn people against each other, against the government, against sanitary authorities, against scientific authorities. In that way, everyone gets sick and the economy gets ruined. First off, why even go through those steps? That implies that the hypocrisy we see from the health experts. So what? We should trust the health experts. So when the health experts say, yeah, COVID might kill millions of us, it's such a threat that we literally have to take your constitutional rights away. We have to. We have to collapse the economy. We have to tell people they can't go to church or they can't even see their family in nursing homes and things like that. But you can go out for Black Lives Matter. If I point out that hypocrisy, I'm doing the bidding of Russia because I'm sowing distrust with the health experts? No. The health experts are sowing distrust of themselves. Secondly, the real geopolitical adversary we have is China. China, at this point, has totally gotten away with at best, intentionally lying about COVID, which has harmed its geopolitical rivals like the United States immensely. In order for China to totally collapse the economy of the United States from here on to infinity, if this year has been an example that will be followed, all they have to do is say, yeah, there's a bad virus here. It's coming to the United States. Y'all better lock down. That's it. That's all China ever has to do. And we'll say, okay, shut everyone down. Lock it down. Stop the economy. Better lock down for 3 months. Meanwhile, China goes, great. You guys did it. China is a way bigger threat, and China is absolutely thrilled that they bought and paid for Joe Biden and he's the president now. If 100% of the population stayed home for 2 weeks and the borders were closed, the virus would die down. Prove it. Is it even possible for that to occur, first off? How do you do it? You going to take the China model? Weld the people in their houses? Yeah, I am a Trump supporter. We're going to weld people in their houses? Is that what we're going to do? Right. That's the whole point, Lord Alpaca. Hypothetically looking at utopian scenarios isn't helping the problem. Right? So yes, we could say things like this. Look, hypothetically, if everyone in the United States, fat guys like Rob, would eat good, exercise right, get into a normal body weight, take prophylactic measures to protect their health over and over, and if they'd have been doing that for 5 years, and if they wouldn't leave their house for 2 weeks and everyone would stay at home, hypothetically, an illness like COVID, and COVID particularly, could be wiped out. That could theoretically be true. It's impossible. So what's the relevance of discussing it? For example, we now know that according to the Red Cross, there were blood samples testing positive for COVID way back in December of 2019. They now know. So let's say that we would have locked down in January. Well, COVID was already out there. And as I said from the beginning, there's two types of illnesses that could kill many people. There are illnesses that are incredibly lethal. So, maybe something like malaria, leprosy, things like that. The way you want to fight those is to have near total lockdowns until the illness is eradicated from specific areas. That's what you want to do. That's not what COVID is. COVID is a disease that could kill many people because it's highly infectious. And with diseases like that, it's almost impossible to stop the spread via lockdown because there will still be, for example, the lockdown that we did was, excuse the language, it was half-assed. Even the harshest lockdowns were half-assed. Oh, you can't go to the ball game, you can't go to work, you can't go to the nursing home. You can all go to Home Depot. You can all go to Walmart. That's too late. It's already going to spread. So instead what you do is try your best to isolate the most vulnerable population and basically let the virus run its course through the healthy population. That's what you try to do. And yes, people will die. The same is true of other illnesses that are highly infectious but low lethality. And there's no proof that a hardcore lockdown for 2 weeks, no half measures, and this all goes away. One, it's impossible to do, as said. And second, there's no proof that it would work. Right, Lord Alpaca, you can go outside. Exactly. How many people would, let's say hypothetically, we literally could force people to not be able to leave their home for 2 weeks. Let's say hypothetically we could do that. How many people would die as a result of that policy? For example, the power went out in my house today. I'm young, I'd be okay. How many old people would have died if they're stuck at home for 2 weeks and they don't have power for 8 hours? Or they run out of food? Or you have to get dialysis? Right? There's a litany of things. The world's not that simple. Well, we just keep everyone indoors. And all it takes is a handful of people, because it's so infectious, to have to go outdoors, which means that the virus still lives. And then, well, when we unlock people after that 2 weeks, the virus is still out there in the ether. And slowly but surely it will infect people again. So then 7 months down the road, we'll go, geez, we need to totally lock everyone down for 2 weeks again. Ad infinitum. Or we could try to leave the virus run its course, develop treatments, protect the most vulnerable, etc. Again, remember, we're talking about a virus. If you're under the age of 75, you have a 99.975 chance of surviving. And we're going to collapse the economy. How many people will die because we literally stop producing food for 2 weeks? How many people would die as a result of that? You might be all right. And again, Pete Davidson on SNL is mocking. Here's a guy that's get paid $300,000 a year. SNL, which, by the way, found loopholes to make sure they could have a live audience. And he's mocking restaurant owners and small business owners that are losing their livelihood. It's easy for Pete Davidson and for the wealthy to say, shit, I'll stay at home for 2 weeks, no problem. That's not the way it works for people living paycheck to paycheck. And once more, these policies that are like, well, if we just did this hypothetically, lock everything completely down for 2 weeks, who does it negatively impact the most? The poorest of people in the world. So they'll starve to death. No problem, right? Whatever, they're undesirable anyways. As long as those people in Martha's Vineyard will be comfortable, they don't want to have to wear a cumbersome mask, so lock down those damn poor people for 2 weeks. Who cares if they can't eat? Is the Sweden experiment a success, in my opinion? I don't know. I think that it's. I think that the question is. That's a difficult way to phrase the question. Let me put it this way: the Sweden experiment does not prove what the lockdown advocates suggested it would. Remember, Neil Ferguson from the Imperial College, who famously claimed that 2.2 million Americans would die of COVID in a do-nothing scenario. By the way, a do-nothing scenario is literally impossible. That implied that people made zero changes in their life and millions of people were dying. That's literally impossible. Even if the government did nothing, you as an individual would take precautions if you saw over 1 million people die of this disease. So the idea that there is a potential do-nothing scenario is ludicrous, and yet that's the health expert that the UK and the US decided to look at their model when they were making these lockdown policies. He said 500,000 people would die in the UK. When that model was taken by scientists at several universities and applied to Sweden, they predicted that it would be catastrophic. Camera not available. Uh-oh. There we go. Sorry about that. I must have bumped the wire. That certainly hasn't happened. Remember, Neil Ferguson said that potentially we could have as few as 20 to 50,000 deaths in the United States if we embrace lockdowns. So in other words, lockdowns would be able to sell 2.2 million if we don't, 20 to 50,000 if we do. So 1,000 times more people or more would die without the lockdown. Sweden clearly shows that's not the case. Now, is Sweden having more deaths than similar countries around it? Yeah, but not catastrophically. Will it be worth it in the long haul? Jack, you're joining late, but yes, I wore a mask almost everywhere. I rarely, one of the weird things about me getting COVID was I didn't have a lot of people to call. I don't really see a lot of people. It's just the way it is. Do I wear a mask when I'm around my friends? A difficult question. No, not if they come to my house. I was not. Anytime I was out in public, I was wearing a mask, though. Even when I was at work, I was wearing a mask. At my new job, the life insurance place, I wore a mask if I was in common areas, but if I was like in trainings and stuff like that with 2-3 people, I did not wear a mask. But yeah, I think Sweden's done okay. Now, one of the unfortunate things for Sweden might be this. Because I don't know a lot about Sweden, so I'm kind of talking on my butt here a little. But because I don't think Sweden is a large cog in the global economic system the way the United States is, or even a country maybe like the UK or Germany, etc., they might suffer economically even though they didn't do a lockdown, because all of these other countries are going to suffer economically and they drive the global economic engine. So they might still suffer economic effects, but probably not near what they would have had they embraced a total lockdown like other places did. Who do I suspect gave me COVID? No clue. I was truck driving the past 2 weeks. It could have been something like that. It could have been, the reason we got tested was because my wife's mom got tested and tested positive. I don't know where she works with elderly people at hospice. I don't know where she could have got it. So it could have been through the truck driving. It could have been my wife works at S&T Bank. She wears a mask the whole time, but she sees people, dozens of people every day. She could have got it at work and infected the rest of us. I don't know. Lord Alpaca says, people in Sweden hate chit-chat. They're generally not social. They culturally stay away from each other in bus stops. Maybe, so it doesn't matter. Again, a better example is to look at Florida versus New York. Why is Florida 17th in per capita deaths when they've basically fought against lockdowns as much as possible in the past 3-4 months? Whereas New York's advocated some of the most stringent lockdowns, and they're number 2 in per capita deaths. Space Ghost had a Black Lives Matter rally from coast to coast. Funny. I used to watch that. I liked the Brack show too back in the day. Well, population density. Right. So let's look at the population density of Florida compared to New York. Florida's 8th in population density, yet 17th in per capita deaths. New York's 7th, so it's as close as could possibly be. New York's number 2. And again, if we go and we look at states like, for example, and you can see here. Oh, sorry, that's not the list. Where was the one? Right here. Connecticut, Massachusetts, Louisiana, Rhode Island, North Dakota, Mississippi, South Dakota, Illinois, Michigan, D.C., Arizona, Indiana, Georgia, Arkansas, all worse per capita deaths than Florida. Yet, we could see when it comes to population density, most of those are below Florida in population density. Here's the problem. And this is something that I said originally. You say, it's just like the Patriot Act. It's the same thing. I call this argument Schrodinger's Patriot Act, right? Let's say hypothetically the following scenario occurs. 9/11 happens. So the national security experts of this country say, here's the deal. Terrorism has the potential to get dirty bombs and wipe us. Hey, what's up, Ramon? Thank you so much for the donation. Eric Clapton was about to release an anti-lockdown song along with Van Morrison, and like clockwork, past racially insensitive remarks just happened to resurface from 44 years ago. Man, I love Van Morrison and Eric Clapton, but yeah, I didn't know of that, but crazy. Yeah, but it's not just New York to Florida, Lord Alpaca. It's a bunch of other states that Florida is more population dense than that still has far fewer deaths per capita. But again, back to what I call Schrodinger's Patriot Act. Here's the problem. 9/11 occurs. The foreign policy experts say terrorists will get dirty bombs. They're going to increase their attacks on the United States. Therefore, we have to pass the Patriot Act, take away your Fourth Amendment rights, or millions upon millions of people will die of COVID. Hey, Paul, thanks for the donation. He says, hello, sicko. At least you're getting it out of the way. Hang in there. My thoughts are with you and Courtney. She's funny in the chat room. Courtney is hilarious. She's one of the greatest. I tried to get her to do a video with me today. She's willing to do videos with me, not so much while she's feeling ill, though. So, anyways, back to the Patriot Act. So they say, we need to pass the Patriot Act and take away your Fourth Amendment rights. Now, let's stop time right there. Bam, Patriot Act passed. Now, the next day, let's look after the day the Patriot Act's for 10 years. Let's say, hypothetically, we don't have one one terrorist attack. So Patriot Act passes. 10 years after that, we don't have one terrorist attack. Do you think the federal government's going to say, oh, I guess we didn't need the Patriot Act? No, they're going to say, see, we were right to take away your rights. We stopped all the terrorism. Okay? Sounds reasonable, right? Okay, now let's go back hypothetically and say they passed the Patriot Act, and for the next 10 years, terror attacks quadruple in the United States, despite the fact we have the Patriot Act. Do you think the federal government's going to say, wow, we were wrong to take away your rights. It didn't help anything. Terrorist attacks increased. No, they're going to say, see, the fact there were terrorist attacks proves that we were right to take away your rights, and we need to do more of it. That's right. That's exactly the point, Lord Alpaca. Intelligence operates in secrecy. You'll never know exactly what attacks they prevented and how. Exactly. So now, let's say COVID happens. They say, we're gonna lock down everything. Let's say they did that. They locked down everyone for 4 months. Let's say hypothetically that happened. They do that, and COVID only kills 50 people. Do you think they'll say, wow, we overreacted. Only 50 people died of COVID. We shouldn't have locked you all down for 4 months. No, they'll say, see, we saved all of you. Millions would have died had we not locked down. Only 50 died. It was a rousing success. Now, let's go back. They locked down. Let's say that 1 million people do die, despite 4 months of lockdowns. Do you think they'll say, we were wrong to lock you down? 1 million died anyways. They'll say, no, see, we were right to lock you down. Look how lethal the virus was. Millions more would have died if we didn't. That's exactly the scenario we're in. It's non-falsifiable. No matter what, they'll say, once you were willing to give your rights away, they were going to say, yep, we did the right thing. We did it. Prove them wrong. We could see it. Now, they said it would be catastrophic. They told us if we didn't lock down, we were looking at apocalypse. Some places like Florida chose to barely do any lockdowns. Yeah, it's not apocalypse there. They're middle of the road. But no one looks at that and says, oh, geez, maybe this makes us question whether the lockdowns are effective or not. They just say, no, Florida's worse than some places, proves they should have locked down. Then when we had places that had the biggest lockdowns like New York and New Jersey that are unmitigated disasters, does that cause people to say, wow, the lockdowns didn't work there? No, Dr. Fauci even said New York's the model we should all look at. Basically the second worst place in the world for dealing with COVID. And our premier COVID expert said, yes, that's where we should model. New York, the COVID patients in nursing homes. That's where that's what he should be. Dr. Fauci, he said, that's where we should look. Cuomo's getting Emmys. He put COVID patients in nursing homes. He has the second highest per capita death rate basically in the world. And he's getting awards for his handling of COVID. This is always the case, no matter what the issue is. When the government is able to sell to the people, we need to take your rights away to prevent a catastrophe, you will never be able to prove that it was wrong to do so. Because they'll say no matter what, if nothing bad happens, they'll say, see, we prevented the catastrophe. If something bad does happen, they'll say, see, we told you a catastrophe was coming. That's why we had to take away your rights. It doesn't matter. Name me a scenario where that wouldn't apply. Give me one scenario. The government comes around. Climate change? Let's say the government comes around and says, you know what, climate change, we have to lock down everyone for 6 months or millions of people will die of climate change. So we lock everyone down for 6 months. Regardless of what happens in that next 6 months, there is no scenario where the government can't say, see, we were right. If a bunch of people die because of climate change, they'll say, see, we told you a bunch of people were going to die, so we had to lock down. If no one dies of climate change, they'll say, see, good thing we locked down over climate change. We prevented all those deaths. They could do that with terrorism, climate change, disease, etc. They can do it with invading foreign countries. We have to go into Iraq or they'll kill us all. So we go into Iraq. They never even remotely come close to attacking the United States. See, good thing we attacked them. We prevented the attack. Or they do attack the United States. See, good thing we attacked them because they did attack. It doesn't matter. That's right, Deadly Agamemnon. All you got to do, just trust the government. Give all your rights and money to the government. They'll take care of you. Trust them. But that's not true, Lord Alpaca. The authorities' goal is not, you're accurate, it's not to prevent COVID. That's true. Their goal, you say it's their goal to keep the infection rate low enough below hospital capacity. That's not true. The authorities' goal is to destroy the middle and working class of this country and make their lives a living hell so that more people become reliant on the government and they could get out problematic people like Donald Trump. That's why, if the authorities, which Nancy Pelosi would be authority, if their goal was merely to help people and keep the numbers of hospitalized low, why was it that Nancy Pelosi was unwilling to send stimulus checks to people until Donald Trump appeared to lose the election? If they were interested in keeping hospital capacity low, why was it that Democratic governors intentionally sent COVID patients into nursing homes? None of that makes sense. Now, if you look at it as their goal was to make the middle class and the working class in this country's lives a living hell, then all the policies make sense. If it is about flattening the curve and just reducing hospital capacity, then how, for example, do you justify the fact that there are places like rural Pennsylvania right now that schools are shut down, even though our hospital capacities are at historic lows? We're actually laying off nurses and doctors in rural Pennsylvania. Highmark Network at one point back in April laid off 750 workers, nurses, doctors, physicians, other type people. 750 in the Highmark Network in central Pennsylvania were laid off. Why? Because hospital capacity was so low, they couldn't continue to operate and pay people. Yet, we still had lockdowns. How does that make any sense whatsoever? We had lockdowns, we had schools locked down when hospitals weren't anywhere near capacity. Right, I agree with you, Lord Alpaca. The left's goal is to make the government larger and then control everyone by controlling the government. Absolutely agree. What do I think about the left comparing COVID deaths to 9/11 every day? It's garbage. It's disgusting. What if I could do the same thing, right? Like, you could cherry pick. It's a horrible illness. Let's ask this of the left. I'm not saying anyone here is on the left, and by all means, if you're on the left, I'm not saying you're a bad person at all. In fact, the people that I've been having discussions with seem very reasonable. I don't know if they're on the left or not. Doesn't matter. But hypothetically, who had the best response? Who had the best response to COVID? Did anybody have a perfect response? If the deaths that are contributable to COVID really are the amount of deaths, like 280,000 in the United States, if those numbers are accurate, what do you think those deaths would have been if we did everything right? Like, if we could see into the future, we had a time machine and we could say, this is exactly what we should have did to limit the amount of deaths. What do you think those deaths would have been? 100,000? 110,000? 150,000? How many could we have prevented by doing things right? We certainly could have done everyone. There's no one who did it perfect, and there's no one who did it as worse as possible. So everyone, some places may have done it better than others. We won't know until the end of this, because you're not just factoring in how many died of COVID or how many are hospitalized of COVID. There's also public health, mental health, and how it's affected by lockdowns and things like that. Other health, like Alzheimer's, substance abuse, suicides, etc., things like that could be negatively affected by lockdowns. People not receiving treatment for other illnesses. I gave the anecdotal story of my brother who needed brain surgery for severe seizures, who was basically unceremoniously booted out of a hospital after only 20 minutes while having severe seizures, which resulted in him having a seizure on the way home and breaking his collarbone. Those are real medical emergencies that occurred in a place that had zero COVID cases, zero COVID patients, because the hospitals had to keep themselves empty in case there was a mad rush in COVID in Jefferson County in the middle of April, when there were zero cases. Then, how many people will die or have their lives severely negatively impacted as a result of economic depression, as a result of the lockdowns? How many military or infrastructure plans will be negatively affected, resulting in decreased quality of life for countries all over the world as a result of the lockdowns? How many people will starve? Because farming and economics have diminished in countries that are responsible for producing food for much of the world. These are difficult questions, don't get me wrong. It's hard to say this is the country that did it. We won't know who did it best, maybe ever, but certainly not for 10 years. We won't know. But even if you did know, is there anyone out there that says, if we would have just did this, if we would have had the mask and we would have did this type of lockdown and we would have did this, then no one would have died of COVID? No one says that. So some amount of people were going to die anyways. So what the hell's the argument here? Oh man, 250,000 people died of COVID. Compare that to 9/11. Okay. So if Trump would have and whoever was in charge would have done everything right, would you still say, 100,000 people died of COVID, compare that to 9/11? And why do we only do this with 9/11? How about this? As a result of lax China policy and open borders, how many people die of opioid overdoses a year? And how many lives have been affected because of that? How many crimes have been committed? How many people have been jailed because of it? Where's the left's bleeding heart for that? Oh, they're pro-China. They're pro-open borders. I didn't see what you were saying, Will, as to why they would be banning you. I'm sorry. I'm trying to go back, but... Yeah, I hope that you're not being banned just for disagreeing, but... Oh, and I trust Rational, so if he booted you, I trust him. So, anyways... So that's the point, and the idea that Trump's solely responsible, again, like, there's several ways that you could blame people, right? For example, let's say I don't get fire insurance on my house, and then lightning strikes and my house catches on fire. People could accurately say, look, Rob knew that fire was a real possibility. He did not get fire insurance on his home. He bears blame for his house burning down the fire. That's absolutely true. However, is my blame as significant as the person who lights the house on fire? Now, you might say, well, what's the analogy here? You might say Donald Trump made poor decisions. I don't know if he made the perfect decision. I certainly have criticized Trump the opposite way of most people. I criticize him for embracing lockdowns. But whatever. You might say he didn't do lockdowns enough. He wasn't good enough on masks. So you blame Donald Trump. But that's not him actively harming people. That's him saying, I don't know if these things work, or I don't have faith if these things work, so I'm not going to do them. It's the equivalent of me saying, I don't know that I need fire insurance, so I'm not going to get it. Yeah, he would bear some blame if it turns out those things would have been effective and he didn't embrace them. However, isn't the blame of the Democratic governors that intentionally put COVID patients into nursing homes knowing they would cause tens of thousands of deaths? Isn't that blame worse? Isn't that a separate type of crime? Yeah, every time I bring this up to the left that wants to say, Donald Trump is responsible for 250,000 deaths in this country, every single damn one of them. This is a genocide. Donald Trump should be held accountable for all of them. I say, what about these Democratic governors that intentionally put COVID patients in nursing homes, causing tens of thousands of deaths? Donald Trump's crime, at best, was of hubris and ignorance. He didn't intentionally march people to their death like the governors did. And every single time I bring this up on the left, you know what they say? Here's some of the responses I get. Oh, I didn't know about that. Anyways, Trump, you're just trying to deflect from Trump. Or, that was just a few cases, that's not a big deal. Tens of thousands of deaths, right? Just a few cases, it's not a big deal. Or, Trump had the power to stop that. As if Trump would have came in and said, no, Cuomo, I'm going to tell you how to do these policies. These very same people wouldn't have said, here's Trump acting as a dictator. Was that Destiny guy on Timcast? Yeah, he was on Timcast. I debated him twice. so far, or 3 times. I've debated him 3 times. But yeah, he was on Timcast the other day. Wait, all of a sudden they don't care. They don't care. They say Cuomo's the model. So, all right, I'm out. I've been doing this way longer than I wanted. Tomorrow, I'll do day 4 of COVID. As you can see, I'm feeling pretty good. The wife's feeling pretty good. I don't begrudge anyone. I'm not blaming each other. I'm not using COVID to say all of a sudden I can make moral declarations about how people should act in their life, et cetera, et cetera. Not doing any of that. I understand. Anyone who got COVID or any illness for that matter or suffered economically, I don't care what your politics are. I really don't. I feel terrible. I wish you the best. I really do. And if you don't believe that, you could go back and watch all of my stuff. I've had dozens upon dozens of people come on and say I deserve to get, I've only had 2 since I've got COVID say I deserved it, but I had dozens before that say I should get COVID because I questioned the lockdowns and things like that. And I should suffer this, that, and the other. I had dozens upon dozens. I will not return that. Even if people disagree with me, if you embrace the lockdown and the lockdown cost your business, I'm not going to say, ha. I'm going to say, yeah, I'm sorry. I tried to warn you. That's what I would say, but I'm not going to. And I will say that I've had people on the left that have disagreed with me reach out to me and say that, they hope that I'm feeling better. So kudos to them for that. So, yeah, I'll get better soon. Don't worry. So, thanks so much. I'm not a leftist for not Trump. That's fair enough. And just, by the way, I understand the need. There are great reasons. I'm a Trump supporter, but let me tell you, and I'm a conservative, and I've ran as a Republican for Congress. But socially, I'm very liberal. I'm for gay marriage, for legalization of marijuana, could be compelled for other drugs. I want to maximize liberty as best as possible. So I'm not totally just right wing. That's not who I am. I understand you could be a great person, be on the left. We need people of different backgrounds. We need probably more than 2 parties. We need at least 2 robust parties, which I think we basically have Trump and one party because the majority of the Republicans are garbage and they just follow the establishment Democrats wherever they want. Yeah, I'm basically Ron Paul. That's what's my favorite politician ever. But I think Trump's the best president we've had in our lifetime because I only care about one issue, and that's corruption. And the election of Trump proved the corruption on a massive scale to the point where we see the FBI engaged in a coup against Donald Trump. We see their almost total capitulation with the mainstream media. We see academia involved in that. We see the entertainment industry. We see the tech companies all out in the open showing their corruption, censorship, advocating for the coup against Donald Trump, working hand in hand with the most dangerous, powerful intelligence agencies in the history of the world. It is the only issue that matters. If you're on the left and you're for fighting climate change, that's your big issue. Or if you're on the right and you're pro Second Amendment, none of that matters because right now our system is so corrupt, your voice doesn't mean shit. So until you end that corruption and stop the ability for these sorts of coups to happen, you better hope that the FBI and the CIA agrees with your position because that's the only way it's getting solved. That's my big issue. Donald Trump, I don't think was playing 4D chess or any of that. I've never said that. I think the mere fact that he was a potential outsider forced those people to out themselves in public for their corruption. And for that, he is the best president in the history of... However, the fact that he dropped the ball in many ways in not enforcing justice on these criminals that engaged in this coup, a lot of that is his fault. I understand the deck was stacked against him like no president in history. I still support him. But he did drop the ball. To this day, if somehow Donald Trump would be listening to me, pardon Julian Assange right now. Release every single document of the Russiagate. Stop listening to Bill Barr and John Durham. Release them all. Leave the American people see. I'm not calling for you to break the law. Not calling for you to give the other side the same treatment they gave you. Just be transparent. Give the documents out so the American people could see them for themselves. Pardon the people that tried to be a voice for transparency like Snowden and Julian Assange. That's mine. So, all right. Thanks so much. I'll do an update tomorrow on COVID. Thank you so much, everyone who donated. Thank you for all the well wishes. Thank you for the discussion. Thanks for listening to me. I really appreciate it. I do. So, all right. I will talk to you all tomorrow. As always, have a good one.